Today. We're going to look briefly through chapters 4, 5, and 6 from the Boy in Striped Pyjamas. We'll be focusing on different things for all of those chapters. The activity that you will be doing today will focus mainly around chapter 5. However, what happens in chapter 4 is really important, and there will be one question that you will need to answer based on your understanding of what we'll look at. So, to begin with, we end chapter 3 with Bruno and Gretel looking through the window, and they've come across another discovery. So this discovery is that they are not alone like Bruno thought they were, but they are actually surrounded by hundreds of people. And this starts to introduce us to the ideas that we've been studying, the Holocaust, but through the perspective of innocent young eyes. So the focus of chapter 4 is what Gretel and Bruno see through the window, but they are small children, and so they don't grasp and understand what we know as the readers, because we understand the context of what's happening. And so we see it through their perspective as they're trying to grapple with understanding what's going on. So let's start from the beginning of chapter 4. To begin with, they weren't children at all, not all of them at least. There were small boys and big boys, fathers and grandfathers. So to start with, they realise that that what they've seen through the window isn't children playing in a yard, but is lots of different types of people. And they're boys, they're small boys, big boys, fathers and grandfathers. So we have a list of all the types of people that Bruno and Gretel can see through the window. Now, if we move along to page 36 here, that I've also highlighted, it describes them what they see out the window. And at first, we see Gretel describing the beautiful garden that has been meticulously cared for and planted with such thoughtfulness to give some vibrancy to this house. But once they go past the garden, this is what they see. About 20 feet further along from the garden and the flowers and the bench with the little plaque on it, everything changed. There was a huge wire fence that ran along the length of the house and turned in at the top, extending further along in either direction, further than she could possibly see. The fence was very high, higher even than the house they were standing in, and there were huge wooden posts like telegraph poles dotted along it, holding it up. At the top of the fence, enormous bales of barbed wire were tangled in spirals, and Gretel felt an unexpected pain inside her as she looked at the sharp spikes sticking out all the way around it. Let's just stop there and think, why is Gretel feeling an unexpected pain inside her as she looks at this huge barbed wire fence which separates them from the people that they see through the window? Why does she have an unexpected pain inside her? If you were thinking it's because all the things that are associated with a big barbed wire fence are horrible things. They remind us of imprisonment. They remind us of wrongdoing. They remind us of pain. Even the thought of barbed wire reminds us of pain. So she is a child and she's too young to really understand what she's looking at and how she's feeling. And all she can describe is that she does have this unexpected pain as she looks at this fence. So that gives us a hint, a foreboding sense of what's going to happen, what is going on behind the barbed wire fence. These are clues that Gretel and also Bruno see, but they can't quite understand what is happening. And at the bottom of page 37 there we have highlighted, "I don't understand," said Gretel. "Who would build such a nasty looking place?" So you can see that both Bruno and Gretel really question through this chapter what they're looking at. They don't understand what is happening behind the scenes of the Third Reich, that there is a Holocaust occurring. They don't know that. They're just children in Germany during the war. They don't understand what Hitler, the Fury, is doing. But They are trying to grapple with what they see. So let's continue as they look through the window. Now, Gretel comes to the decision, and we see this on the top of page 39, that it must be the countryside, that she's heard that in the country there are open places with no grass, there are farms. It's not like the city. It's very different from the city. And so she decides this must be it. It's the countryside. Perhaps this is our holiday home, she added hopefully. Now, children are always looking through at things with a sense of innocence and always hopeful that things are better than they seem. They have an ability to be hopeful where adults are often pessimistic and negative. But Bruno questions her decision and what she's come to decide. He says he doesn't believe that it could possibly be a farm. He says there should be cows and pigs and sheep and horses, said Bruno, if it was a farm. I mean, not to mention chickens and ducks. And there aren't any, admitted Gretel quietly. And so she has to come to agree with Bruno that her first decision of what this place could be isn't actually correct. And then they start to realise that these people there aren't farmers. And so here on page 40, we see her asking in a quiet voice, "Who are all those people?" she asks. And what are they all doing there? They don't know and they don't understand. As they look closer, they start to describe some of the things they see. And again, we're seeing this through the eyes of children. A few stood near huts in quiet spots, staring at the ground as if it was some sort of game where they didn't want to be spotted. Others were on crutches, and many had bandages around their head. Bruno and Gretel could see hundreds of people, but there were so many huts before them, and the camp spread out so much further than they could possibly see that it looked like there must be thousands out there. Then they see a group of children and they describe what they see. A group of children huddled together and being shouted at by a group of soldiers. The more they shouted at, the closer they huddled together. But then one of the soldiers lunged towards them and they separated and seemed to do what he wanted them to do all along, which was to stand in a single line. When they did, the soldiers all started to laugh and applaud them. "It must be some sort of rehearsal," suggested Gretel, ignoring the fact that some of the children, even some of the older ones, even the ones as grown up as her, looked as if they were crying. So again, Gretel is trying to grapple with what's happening. And first, it's not a farm, so maybe she thinks they're rehearsing some kind of game or some kind of show. But Bruno still questions that. And they start to look closely at the children, and Gretel acknowledges that the children look like they've never had a bath in their lives. And then Gretel decides to go back to her room. She says, "I'm going back to my room to arrange my dolls. The view is decidedly nicer from there." We see Gretel always trying to distance herself from what's happening and not be engaged in the empathy, in feeling for other people. She decides that they're dirty and so she wants nothing to do with them. But we also see that she is, on the inside, she's still affected by what's happening. And we see this when with that remark, she walked away, returning across the hallway to her bedroom and closing the door behind her. But she didn't go back to arranging her dolls quite yet. Instead, she sat down on the bed and a lot of things went through her head. So we can see that she's really thinking about what she sees. And she's not satisfied with what she's come up with as to what's happening. So she's trying to grapple with these horrible looking children and these men that have bandages and are in this horrible looking place. She's trying to understand what is going on and why they're here. And so we see this through the eyes of children. And the last observation that Bruno makes about the people that they see through the window is on the bottom of page 43 here, that they were all wearing the same clothes as each other, a pair of grey striped pyjamas with a grey striped cap on their heads. And so this gives us a clue about the title of the novel, that what he can see is it looks like all of these people that he sees, all these men, these boys and these children are all wearing pyjamas. And his comment is, "How extraordinary," he mutters before turning away. So it gives us a clue and a first insight into what is happening in the background of Bruno and Gretel's lives, that they've come to a new place, and that place, there's something happening there. Okay, join me for the next video as we unpack chapter 5 and 6.